Senator, thank you very much for spending the time to have this conversation.
It's good to be with you.
So you've come out for regime change in Iran, as distinct just from taking out the nuclear sites. What does regime change look like in Iran?
Somebody else in charge.
How do you get there?
Look, that ultimately has to be a popular uprising from the people. And it's not a complicated question. Is America better off with a country that has a leader who hates us and wants to kill us, or to have a country with a leader who likes us and wants to be friends with us? And
definitely the latter is better.
Of course.
Yeah.
And so that's not a complicated statement. Look, I believe you look across the world when you have countries that have dictators that are viciously anti-America. Venezuela, Maduro hates us. Would we be better off with Maduro out of power? Absolutely. I want our enemies out of power, and I want our friends in power.
I could not agree more. The question is, how do you get there?
Of course.
We've been trying to kill Maduro for quite some time. We have troops there.
I don't know that we've been trying to kill Maduro.
We have. Oh. And I think you know that. And
I don't know that.
Okay, well, as a statement of fact, we have. So
we do have massive sanctions. We tried to pressure him out of office.
Yeah,
I'm not aware of efforts.
I'm just saying there's a lot of pressure coming from various parts of the U.S. government on that government, and it's still there.
Yeah.
Same, the country of your ancestors, Cuba, 1959, we've been working on that. Hasn't worked. So I think we both agree it's hard to do.
It absolutely is hard. And look, I think you're reasonable to ask, how do we produce that? And I think there's a distinction between what your objective is and the means to get it. There are all sorts of things I would say we would be better off. We'd be better off in China without Xi there. Should we invade China and topple Xi? Of course not.
Better off with no national debt.
There are lots of things.
Totally.
But it's good to say, all right, what are our objectives?
Right.
And so with the Ayatollah in Iran, saying you're for regime change, I don't view as complicated. I mean, the guy literally leads mobs chanting death to America. Mm-hmm. So that's not good.
Definitely not good. But the reason I think it's important to get a little more detailed about how that might happen is because there's military action in progress, which we're supporting. And the president has said clearly, including last night, that he is focused on eliminating the capacity of the Iranian government to produce nuclear weapons. You are saying we need to use military force to effect regime change.
I have not said that.
Oh, I must have.
No, I have not said that once. Okay. I don't think we need to use military force to do regime change. I said I support it. I would like to see it happen. You asked me how should it happen? A popular uprising. What I've advocated for. All right, let's step back a second. You and I, we've known each other a long time. I would say we agree on about 80% of the things on Earth.
For sure.
And there are a lot of things, and we can get into the nitty-gritty of foreign policy as much as you want. There are a lot of things on which you and I agree, not just a little bit, but violently.
Well, I totally agree. I was rooting for you in your last campaign, for sure.
Well, thank you. Look, you have been heroic on the border. You've been one of the clearest and best voices in the whole country on securing the border and on the absolute crisis we're facing. And in Texas, I see it and live it every day. In COVID, in fact, you may recall in the middle of the COVID lockdown, I was out walking my dog when the whole world was shut down and we were living in lunatic times. And I called you and said, Tucker, your nightly monologues are the single best thing on television. Like I watch them like an injection of crack. Okay, I'm mixing my metaphor because you don't inject crack, but you get what I'm saying.
Try.
No, I mean, you were standing up and speaking like, what the hell are we doing in a way that we desperately, desperately needed. And so whether it's securing the border, whether it's the insanity of COVID lockdowns and the vaccine mandates, whether it is the Second Amendment or the First Amendment, you and I agree on a ton of stuff. The 20% where we disagree, I do think is meaningful. And it's mostly in the foreign policy space. And what I would say, if you'll allow me to get a little theoretical, and then I'm happy to get specific.
Yes.
For a long time, people have perceived two different poles of Republican foreign policy. There have been interventionists, and those have been people like John McCain and Lindsey Graham and George W. Bush. And there have been isolationists. And the most prominent of those have been Ron Paul and Rand Paul, and there are others. And people perceive those are the two choices. You got to be one or the other. I've always thought both were wrong. I don't agree with either one. the way I view my own foreign policy.
I'm with you, by the way, for whatever it's worth. I agree with you.
Okay, good.
I don't know who set up that binary, but there are lots of choices, actually.
I mean, people sort of naturally fall into, I think they want to classify people, and they're like, okay, you're one or the other, and you got to be all or nothing. And the interventionists, it seems, have never seen a country they didn't want to invade, and that doesn't make any sense to me. And the isolationists, I think, don't take the threats to America seriously. And I think that's naive and it doesn't work. And so my view, I consider myself a third point on the triangle. And what I describe that as is that I am a non-interventionist hawk, which sounds a little weird, but what do I mean by that? I mean the central touch point for U.S. foreign policy and for any question of military intervention should be the vital national security interest of the United States. How does this make America safer? How does this protect Americans? If it does, we should be strong. And actually, another way of conceiving what I'm saying, I'm speaking theoretically, but Reagan referred to it as peace through strength. And actually, I think Donald Trump's foreign policy is very much what I'm describing, a non-interventionist hawk, where he understands that, and I think this is historically true, the best way to avoid war is being strong. That weakness and isolationism, I think, encourages war. So going back to regime change, where you started in Iran.
So just to make, I don't think I disagree with anything you've said, so we may not be that far apart, really, because you said that the single criterion for making decisions about America's foreign policy is America's national interest.
Yes.
That's it.
Yeah. Which is also America first. That's another way of putting that as well. I think it's
the definition of it.
Yeah.
Question is, are we watching that now?
So I think we are. And from what you've said publicly, I think on Iran in particular, you and I disagree. And all right, let me contrast it when Obama was president. When Obama was president, you remember he talked about wanting to have military action against Syria. Mm-hmm. And at the time, I tried to keep an open mind to it. I said, okay, let me listen to the commander-in-chief, describe to me how this is in America's interest and what your plan is. And Bashar Assad was a bad guy. He was killing his own citizens, and he had chemical weapons that were very dangerous. I could conceive of a commander-in-chief laying out a plan for, okay, we're going to go in and say, grab the chemical weapons and leave. Like, I could see that if there was a real threat to America and there was a plan to prevent that, I could see supporting that. So I wanted to hear what he had to say. And I listened both in classified briefings and public questioning. And number one, their public defense of it was incoherent. So John Kerry said, we're going to engage in an unbelievably small strike. I think that's a quote. I'm like, okay, and to do what? At the time, there were 9 major rebel Islamic groups in Syria. I'm like, okay, I agree, Bashar Assad's a bad guy. You topple him. And one of the 9 other groups takes over. 7 of them were affiliated with radical Islamic terrorism. You had Al-Qaeda and Al-Nusra. I'm like, wait, how is it better to have lunatics who hate us in charge? Assad's a bad guy, but I don't want worse guys in charge. Obama administration couldn't give an answer to that. And ultimately, when you press them, John Kerry in particular, I pressed, and he would say, well, we need to defend international norms. Like, what the hell's an international norm? I don't know what it is, but I'm not interested in putting U.S. servicemen and women in harm's way to defend one.
Amen.
So I opposed the Syria attack and opposed it vocally. And it was interesting. Rand and I agreed. Rand's a friend of mine, but we agreed with that position for different reasons. What I was asking is I think the question we should ask, how does this make America safer? The Obama administration couldn't give me an answer, so I opposed it. I think Iran is very different.
Let me ask what you think of how Syria wound up, because Bashar al-Assad now lives in Moscow.
Yeah.
He was taken out by our allies, and he's been replaced by a radical Islamist who was affiliated with ISIS. So is that a win or no?
Unclear. Look, Syria's a mess, so I've consistently opposed.
But we had a secular leader in a religious and ethnically diverse country. Now we have a religious extremist, Islamic religious extremist, who's overseeing the purge of Christians and Alawites. Is that better? That doesn't seem like a win.
One of the things you said is you said he was taken out by our allies. I don't think that's right. Israel didn't take Assad out. What happened, and I'll tell you.
What about Turkey?
Turkey didn't take him out. So it was interesting. I had a long.
How did Assad get kicked out?
Yeah. When Netanyahu was in D.C. a couple of months ago, he and I sat down for a couple of hours. He's a good friend of mine. And we talked actually about Syria. He made an interesting point that I've not heard anywhere else, in that he said he believes what toppled Assad was when Israel took out Nasrallah. Nasrallah was the head of Hezbollah, and they took him out. And he made an interesting point. He said it's fascinating how a charismatic leader, and Bibi said, look, Nasrallah was a very effective terrorist leader. And when they took him out, that power base was supporting Assad. And that ultimately, in Bibi's analysis, removed the support from Assad and toppled him. But they weren't trying to take out Assad. My view now, I don't know.
So you don't think that, and I don't, it is very confusing, and I don't know that anyone really knows all the details, but you don't think that Israel or Turkey or NATO ally Turkey played any role in toppling Assad?
I don't know. I don't know that they did. Look, my understanding of that, they clearly took out Nasrallah and Hezbollah. They've decimated Hezbollah, but Hezbollah was waging war on them. So decimating Hezbollah was very good for Israel and very good for America, too. I mean, Hezbollah hated us. I would put Assad in the category of an unintended consequence, and whether it's good or bad, I don't know. I think time will tell.
For the United States.
Yeah, for the United States. I think time will tell the new leadership there. You're right to be concerned. Let me step back and let's talk regime change generally. I mentioned Syria. I also opposed the Iraq War. I think the Iraq War was a serious mistake. And we have a pattern, and going back to this binary of the interventionist and the isolationist. The interventionists advocate over and over again, there's a bad guy, there's a dictator who's doing bad things to his people, and they say, let's go topple him. And you have dictators in the Middle East who are killing radical Islamic terrorists. We come in and topple them. The radical Islamic terrorists take over, and they start killing Americans. In my view, how the heck does that help us? Like, Saddam Hussein was a horrible human being. He murdered and tortured people. Unequivocally bad guy. But it got much worse after we toppled him. And you ended up having ISIS rise up. I mean, that was the cause of ISIS, was toppling Saddam Hussein. Same thing in Libya. You had Gaddafi, another horrible guy, that under Obama, we toppled him. And you ended up having radical Islamic warlords taking over. And so, and it's the question I asked in Syria. Okay, well, what's the plan? And how is this good or bad for the United States? And so I don't think... With Iran, I view Iran as very different from Iraq.
But up to that point, you say we disagree. I don't hear really anything. I'm not quite sure what happened in Syria, but I don't know. So, right. But other than that, I don't hear anything I disagree with at all.
Yeah.
It sounds like we're in a complete agreement. I wonder, though, is there a successful regime change that the United States supported that you're aware of in the last 100 years?
Sure. Defeating the Soviet Union and the Soviet Union collapsing, winning the Cold War. That was the most consequential step for U.S. national security interests of our lifetimes.
Okay.
And
so you would classify that as a regime change that we affected?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Look, you and I are in my office. We're sitting next to a painting of Reagan in front of the Brandenburg Gate. And up top are the words, "Tear down this wall," in German, in the style of the graffiti.
Right.
And I think those are the most important words any leader has said in modern times. And if you look at how Reagan waged the Cold War, and Reagan is very much my model for how to, I actually think how Reagan took on the Soviet Union is exactly how we should take on China. Now, starting from the point, look, Reagan was not an interventionist. In 8 years, the biggest country Reagan ever invaded was Grenada. He was very reluctant to use U.S. military force.
He didn't respond after the 83 barracks bombings.
You're right. Yeah, he made the judgment that the risk exceeded the benefits. And that's a very rational decision to make. And it's reflected. Trump has made those same decisions where he is willing to use military force, but he very much asks, okay, is this good or bad for America? Does this endanger U.S. servicemen and women or not? And one of the points about the Cold War, look, nobody in their right mind wanted a shooting war between America and the Soviet Union. The two biggest nuclear powers on Earth firing bullets at each other is really unhealthy for human beings. Same thing is true with China. Nobody with any sense says, hey, let's go to war with China. That's really dumb, and a whole lot of people could die. But the Cold War showed we've got lots of tools short of sending the Marines to fight against a regime. And one of the most important tools is the bully pulpit. And so when I say I support regime change, I actually think just simply laying out what the Ayatollah does. And so I spend a lot of time, I speak to Iranian dissident groups. I speak out against human rights abuses. I think shining a light on the depravity of leaders is a really powerful tool that America has.
Should we limit our activity to that?
It depends. Again,
because the U.S. government pays opposition groups, militarized opposition groups in Iran to overthrow the government. We've done it in a lot of different places, as you know. I'm not saying it's bad, but that's very different from what you're describing. You're saying we're making a moral case, as we did for 7 years with the Soviets. Our system works, yours doesn't.
Yep.
And I think we made a credible case for that, and we beat them over 70 years economically.
And that was a huge part of it.
Right. I think everyone would agree that was the main part of it. We didn't beat them in Vietnam. North Korea.
The main part of it, but it was tied to a military buildup. So I think it was two things. It was one, the clarity. So Reagan came in and he described the Soviet Union as an evil empire.
Right.
And all of the intelligentsia in D.C., all the Democrats, all the media, they're like, what a horrible thing to say. You can't say that. Reagan went to the United Kingdom and he said, Marxism, Leninism will end up on the ash heap of history. People were horrified. They asked him, all right, what's your strategy in the Cold War? He said, very simple. We win, they lose. And that was all viewed as sort of a Philistine simplicity. And I think it was exactly right. And laying that out, speaking, do you know the backstory behind the Berlin Wall speech?
Yeah, I do. Yes.
You probably know Peter Robinson, who was the speechwriter.
Yes.
So 3 times the State Department deleted those words from that speech. And 3 times Reagan wrote it back. And the State Department argued, they said, Mr. President, you can't say this. This is too bellicose. This is too provocative. And my favorite, they said, this is too unrealistic. The Berlin Wall will stand till the end of time. And Reagan said, look, this is the whole point of the speech. And less than 3 years after Reagan gave that speech, the Berlin Wall was torn to the ground. And it wasn't knocked down by American Army tanks. We didn't shoot missiles at it. It was shining truth and light that tore it down. It was also rebuilding the American military. It was what was then pejoratively called Star Wars, where the Soviet Union, their economy couldn't match our military buildup, and it bankrupted them. That's an example of peace through strength.
I wonder, I mean, is there anybody who was alive in 1989 who wouldn't trade that America for the one we live in now? There's not one person, I don't think.
Oh, sure.
But, I mean, just the basic metrics, debt, suicide rate, life expectancy, it was, I wonder why after that victory, America didn't thrive in the way that we thought that it would, that I thought that it would. My family was involved in that. I mean, we were very focused on it in my house. Like, we won. And I wonder 2 things. Why didn't the United States kind of declare victory and make some sort of arrangement with Russia that allowed like mutual prosperity rather than continuing a Cold War? And second, I wonder why the United States didn't get a lot better. Like, why don't we have better infrastructure? Why don't we have fewer homeless? Why do we have all these drugs? Like, if we won, why does our country look like this? I walked across from Union Station this morning, as you do, I'm sure, every day, and all these people lying in the street and sleeping outside. It's like, what is that?
Look, there's no doubt there are really dangerous forces in our society. Some of it is politics and some of it is culture. And one of the mistakes people make in politics is thinking everything is politics. So the political answer, which I happen to believe, is we went much further down the road of liberalism. You look at Bill Clinton, who inherited the peace dividend of the Cold War being over and moved us more to the left, and then Obama accelerated it a lot. So there are lots of bad economic policies, but I also think there are cultural things. You know, the loss of faith,
I agree with all of
family.
I know what you're going to say, and I agree 100%. I bet there's not one word that I would disagree with. All I'm saying is, like, I think it's important to step back and ask.
But I actually think Russia has very little to do with it. So,
well, that's kind of the point that I'm trying to make, which is Like we're all sort of focused on beating our adversaries abroad, but what is victory worth if our own country becomes what it is now? And maybe we're spending a little too much time focused abroad and not enough time focused on the people sleeping outside Union Station.
So look, I absolutely think we need to focus at home emphatically, and we need to focus on prosperity. We need to focus on reducing the debt, reducing spending, empowering people, low taxes, small businesses, American free enterprise. It's the most powerful force for fighting poverty the world has ever seen. I'm 1,000% there. I also recognize it is a dangerous world, and part of the responsibility of leaders, part of President Trump's responsibility, is to keep America safe. Let's go back to where we started.
But can I ask, you've been in the district a long time in D.C., so have I, and the city's way more dangerous, and Congress runs this city.
No, it's a complete crap hole.
So I'm saying, like, no Iranian's ever going to kill me, but I could get carjacked here. Well, and I just don't understand how the Congress could run this city and focus on the dangers of Iran when the city is like garbage. Okay. It's garbage.
But Congress doesn't run the city. We could.
Congress does run the city. It's in the Constitution.
It's in the Constitution, but they've given home rule, so it's a Democrat mayor who runs it.
You control the Congress.
I'd vote for it, but it is a question of math.
Okay, but I'm just saying, like, why? How can people ignore? It's like if my own kids are drug addicts, but I'm focused on my neighbor's kids. It's like I'm neglecting my own kids, and there's a sense in which the Congress is neglecting the country that elected them in favor of this relentless focus on other people's problems. That's the way it feels as an American.
Look, there are lots of problems in America that we need to fix. Why is D.C. a pit? Because you have a mayor and a Democrat city council that won't let police officers arrest bad guys. And in every city you see across the country, whether it's New York, whether it's Chicago, whether it's L.A., whether it's San Francisco, if you have Democrats, we see the L.A. riots where they won't let people be arrested. All right.
Then why not work in regime change here? Why not use the bully pulpit?
What do you think I do every day? And
I never see a Republican senator stand up and say, I just walked to work this morning over people dying of drug ODs. We're going to shut this place down unless they fix it. They're mad about Putin. Like, what did Putin do to Washington? Nothing.
Look, in terms of regime change, let's talk this week. The riots in L.A., I've made very clear that the cause of those riots are Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass. And when you elect communists who hate America, who stop law enforcement from arresting criminals, you get what you get on the street.
Amen, I agree.
My in-laws are Californians, and they're wonderful people. Heidi grew up on the Central Coast of California. And I remember I was texting with my mother-in-law, and I think I sent her a video of criminals going to a store and just looting in California. And her response, she said something like, well, this is really terrible. I wish we could. It's a shame we can't do anything about this. So yes, you can. Go in and arrest them. Throw their butts in jail. Put them in handcuffs. 100%. And it stops.
Exactly.
And so we know how to fix these things. And D.C. is I think D.C. voted, if I remember right, 92% Democrat. Democrat policies don't work, and they destroy every community that they are in charge of.
Then why don't Republicans assert their constitutional authority over the city? Don't they control the Congress?
Yes, I'd be all for it.
Who's against it?
Susan Collins is really vocally against it. So on questions of home rule, so for example, let's take an issue you and I care a lot about, the COVID lockdowns. I had a couple of years ago in the middle of them. D.C. was proposing, the D.C. school district was proposing throwing out of school any child that was not vaccinated. And at the time, if I remember correctly, it was something like 40% of the African-American students in D.C. were not vaccinated. So we're talking about literally throwing out 40% of the kids at public school. And so I had a vote on the Senate floor to say, look, they can't throw kids out of school for this. And we ended up having a big argument. And part of the argument was home rule, where there were, and Susan was the most vocal Republican that's like, no, we have to let D.C. run. And I'm like, why? Constitution gives us the power to do it. And it ended up, by the way, every single Democrat, all of them, voted in favor of the D.C. public schools being able to throw out 40% of the black kids from school. And I said, look, you throw a kid out of school, you got a 14, 15-year-old boy, you throw him out of school, you know what's going to happen next. He's going to join a gang. He's going to engage in crimes. He's going to engage in drugs. He could be dead within 5 years if that kid doesn't get an education. And the Democrats were more than happy to say, we don't care. Right now, our religion is get the vaccine or to hell with you.
But can you see, I mean, once again, I couldn't agree with you more, but can you feel the frustration of people, including your voters, every American, at the emphasis on foreign countries and the threat we supposedly face, a lot of which is fake, obviously, over the kind of slowly unfolding tragedy of what's happening to our country. The dollars spent, the aid packages to Ukraine to pay the retirement of civil servants in a country that we have nothing to do with, the endless support for Israel, very expensive, when people are literally buying groceries on credit in the United States. Can you feel like it's nothing against Ukraine or Israel or any other country?
All right, let's stop. You said the support for Israel, very expensive. How much support do we give to Israel?
Well, you tell me, you vote for it.
Yeah, it's about $3 billion a year is the military assistance.
Is that the only assistance?
Yeah, we just have military assistance. Israel does not have additional assistance. There's an MOU, a memorandum of understanding, and it's $3 billion a year.
So what is it costing to support the bombing campaign to protect Israel right now from Iran?
So I don't know right now, but I'll tell you this. Let's go back to the touchstone on foreign policy, American interest. Our support, our military support for Israel is massively in America's national security interest,
what does it cost?
It benefits us enormously.
Well, before we can make independent judgments about whether or not that's true, and I'm certainly open to it. American?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I'm telling you what, and by the way, I'm not the CIA. I'm not the Department of Defense. I'm telling you what they have told us.
I'm not disputing it. I'm merely saying
we are.
That I'm not. I'm saying the logic train has a massive hole in it. If you believe that's true, then you should, by definition, support killing the people trying to kill our president. But you don't support that.
Now, Tucker,
so I'm wondering what's going on here.
Tucker, you took offense to the word isolationist, and I genuinely don't mean it as a pejorative. I disagree with it. But if you don't like that term, I don't know how else to describe what is a coherent foreign policy that says we're surrounded by two giant nations. By the way, isolationism has long been a school of foreign policy. I believe in
self-defense. I'm not but not into the slurs, the anti-Semite stuff. I just don't like that. I'm telling you what I believe.
So, but is there a single military action Trump took that you agree with? So, do you agree with taking out General Soleimani?
Oh, I don't know. It turned out better than I thought, I guess.
I mean, you said at the time it would lead us to World War III.
I was worried about it. I've seen that happen.
But that proved not the case.
I was wrong, as I have been many times.
Did you agree with taking out the ISIS caliphate?
Well, if we took out the ISIS caliphate, why are they running Syria right now? And you're for that. Why is that?
What do you mean? I didn't say I'm for that.
You don't seem to have a problem with it.
I didn't say that.
ISIS is now running Syria. You're like, we'll see.
No, I did.
Look, I mean, I know why.
By the way, I know why. Push Assad out. Assad toppled.
It's hilarious.
You know why I don't
Assad
care?
is bad, but no, ISIS runs Syria, but that's fine. We'll just kind of wait and see on ISIS. Not a big deal.
You know
not
why?
A big deal. They're trying to kill Trump.
Hold on a second. I want to get back. You know why I don't care, and why? And you do your trademark smirky laugh. I know why you don't care.
What are you even talking about?
What? Why don't I care?
I don't know why. You tell me. Because you think it's okay because they're not making angry noises or something, but by your own standards, ISIS is so immoral that they must die, but now they're running Syria, and you don't think that we should take military action against the government of Syria because why? They're ISIS.
What I said is I don't know how good or bad it'll be. Look, I wasn't pushing Assad out. He fell. He fell on his own, in part because he was heavily supported by Hezbollah, and when Israel took out the Hezbollah leadership, he lost his base of support.
But the current ISIS leadership, you don't think is bad? You can't say it's terrible that ISIS runs a country?
I am concerned about it.
Concerned? Aren't you horrified?
I want to see what they do.
Oh, so you got a wait and see attitude on ISIS now?
On the government of Syria, they are not actively, that I am aware of, trying to murder Americans. And that's a real dividing line. Are you trying to murder Americans or not?
I'm just saying it's a little weird that we waged this war against ISIS and now they're running a country in the Mediterranean. I think that people would be very, very upset about that, but you don't seem very upset about that.
Did you agree with Trump taking out al-Baghdadi, the head of ISIS?
I'm totally opposed to ISIS, and what I care about is results, actually, and if taking out the head of ISIS ends ISIS, I guess I'm for it, but now ISIS runs Syria, so I'm wondering how does this work?
I mean, my point is...
At the time, I mean, I've taken so many different positions over the years, some of which have been wrong. I really do my best to be honest and correct if they are and admit that I was wrong. I'm not one of these people who's like, I've always been consistent. No, my views change all the time because the facts change all the time. You're not going to get consistency from me. You're only going to get sincerity.
Well, I will say this, and look, I believe you're sincere.
Yeah.
But
I'm not God. I'm just some guy watching, trying to figure out the right thing for America.
And I think because you believe you were mistaken, and I agree previously, I think you've overcorrected.
Overcorrected. I'm worried about turning this mess in Iran into a much larger mess. That's the concern. And
by the way, that's a reasonable worry.
Look, I know it's reasonable. And I know you've been like, you're like ready to call me all these names for asking, you're just asking questions. Yes, I am. So here's my question to you. If the Ayatollah is killed in Iran, and he very well could, if there's a war. I have just read in the paper this morning that Israel tried to take him out twice and Trump told them not to.
I have read that. I don't have independent confirmation one way or the other.
Do you think that they should take him out?
So I actually talked about it. As you know, I do a podcast every week, Verdict with Ted Cruz, and I actually talked about it in the latest podcast. And I said, look, I've seen the reporting that says that Trump asked them not to take out the Ayatollah. And what I said in the podcast is I think it's reasonable for them to decide not to try to take him out. What they've done is targeted just about the entire top level of the military, the people that actually conduct the war. I can see an argument that taking out both the head of state and a religious leader could make him a martyr and could cause more problems than it's worth. And by the way, if you take out the Ayatollah, I don't know that the next guy isn't just as bad. And so I am...
What happens to the country?
I don't know, but you mentioned before, and I want to go back to this. You said something like, you, like most other politicians, are engaged in moral terms. And let me be clear, I am talking about national interests. I am talking about protecting America. So there are bad guys on planet Earth that I don't think we should take out, even though they're bad guys.
Good.
I'll call them bad guys, but I'm not willing to use U.S. military force to take them out. In this instance, what Israel is doing is taking out their capacity to build nuclear weapons. Why? Because they judge the risk is too high if they got nuclear weapons.
I understand that. I mean, I understand that. I think it's in progress. I think it'll probably be achieved, probably with U.S. military support. Who knows? But the president said he's for that.
And by the way, where the military support is most needed is Fordow, which is it's a bunker that's built under a mountain.
Right.
And Israel's taken out most of the rest, like Natanz, which is their big enrichment site. They bombed the hell out of it. Fordow was deliberately built deep into a mountain so that Israel couldn't take it out. And there's an active discussion because the U.S. has bunker buster bombs that are big enough to take out Fordow.
30,000 pounds.
Yeah. Yes. And Israel doesn't. So the one military piece
nor the aircraft to fly them.
Correct. Right.
But here's, I guess, what bothers me is that I said 2 weeks ago, the real goal here is regime change in Iran. It's not.
I don't think that's Trump's goal.
It's your goal. It's Israel's goal. I'm not attacking anyone. I'm just saying it's important to be honest and not lie and not attack people for telling the truth.
So I believe I've been assiduously honest in this, but words matter. You said the real goal here is regime change, and it's your goal. And I want to be clear.
Well, you said it was your goal.
I want to be clear because words matter. Do I support regime change, and would I like a government that doesn't hate America and isn't trying to kill us in Iran? Yes, that's a good outcome. Is that the objective of these military strikes? I don't think necessarily. I don't know if it's Israel's. It's not my objective. My objective is taking out the
U.S. If Israel decides we're going to decapitate the government and try to foment an uprising against it, should the United States participate in that operation in any way?
Look, I have not called for killing the Ayatollah. And there is nations in war generally refrain from attacking and killing heads of state. Now, the Ayatollah doesn't. He's trying to kill Trump. We talked about that.
But we shouldn't punish him for it.
Look, there has been a long-standing nations in war have refrained from killing heads of state. I have not publicly called for killing the Ayatollah. What I've called for is doing whatever is necessary to stop him from getting nuclear weapons. In the first Trump term, what that meant was maximum pressure. So in the first Trump term, I spent a lot of time urging the president to withdraw from the disastrous Iranian nuclear deal that Obama had. President Trump agreed with me. He did that. And then I urged him to end the oil waivers and to sanction the hell out of the country. And it ended up crippling their economy. So Iran at the time was selling 2 million barrels of oil a day. 1 million barrels of oil a day. When President Trump ended the oil waivers, it cut their sales to 300,000 barrels a day. At the end of the Trump term, the Iranian economy was in shambles. They had massive inflation. I think the regime was teetering. I think it might have fallen. I would use economic sanctions and I would use moral suasion to try to effectuate the regime change.
Okay, so you topple the regime and by whatever means, what happens then? How many people live in Iran, by the way?
I don't know the population.
At all?
No, I don't know the population.
You don't know the population of the country you seek to topple?
How many people live in Iran?
92 million.
Okay. Yeah.
How could you not know that?
I don't sit around memorizing population tables.
Well, it's kind of relevant because you're calling for the overthrow of the government.
Why is it relevant whether it's, it's 90 million or 80 million or 100 million? Why is that relevant?
Because if you don't know anything about the country...
I didn't say I don't know anything about
Okay, what's the ethnic mix of Iran?
They are Persians and predominantly Shia. Okay,
it's not even... You don't know anything about Iran. So
I am not the Tucker Carlson expert on Iran.
You're a senator who's calling for the overthrow of the government.
You're the one who
don't know anything about the country.
No, you don't know anything about the country. You're the one who claims they're not trying to murder Donald Trump. You're the one who can't figure out if it was a good idea to kill General Soleimani, and you said it was bad.
You don't believe they're trying to murder Trump.
Yes, I do.
Because you're not calling for military strikes against them in retaliation. And if you really believe that...
We're carrying out military strikes today.
You said Israel was.
Right, with our help. I said we. Israel is leading them, but we're supporting them.
Well, you're breaking news here because the U.S. government last night denied, the National Security Council spokesman Alex Pfeiffer denied on behalf of Trump that we were acting on Israel's behalf in any offensive capacity.
No, we're not bombing them. Israel's bombing them.
You just said we were.
We are supporting Israel.
High stakes. You're a senator. If you're saying the United States government is at war with Iran right now, people are listening.
Okay, we are not bombing them.
Oh, okay.
Israel is bombing them. And hey, why did you do the snide okay?
What do you mean? Because this is super high stakes stuff. This is a huge country that borders a lot of other important countries. A lot of the world's energy comes from there. So you don't want another disaster. You don't want to be reckless.
The Ayatollah refers to Israel as the little Satan and America as the great Satan. Do you believe him when he says it's the great Satan? Do you think if the Ayatollah could murder both of us right now that he would? I do. I believe him.
Okay, I assume no good faith on the part of the Ayatollah.
No, not
and
good
if your
faith.
implication is like I'm pro-Ayatollah or something.
No, it's not good faith. It's that...
Just saying, you're a lawmaker. You're a powerful person in Washington. This is the most powerful country in the world. If you're calling for toppling in government, it's incumbent on you to know something about the country and to think through the consequences of that. And you haven't, and you don't. And I'm saying that's reckless.
Okay, you engage in reckless rhetoric with no facts. And to be clear,
I'm not calling for the overthrow of a government. You
put out a newsletter attacking Donald Trump and calling him complicit.
I can read Donald Trump.
Yes, you have. And by the way,
I campaigned for Donald Trump.
Okay, yes.
And this is after anti-Semitism, this is the last refuge. You're an anti-Semite and you hate Trump.
Okay,
I love Trump.
I will read. You put out a whole newsletter saying Trump has abandoned America first. And here's what Trump said in response. Well, considering that I'm the one that developed America first and considering that the term wasn't used until I came along, I think I'm the one who decides that. For those people who say they want peace, you can't have peace if Iran has a nuclear weapon. So for all of those wonderful people who don't want to do anything about Iran having a nuclear weapon, that's not peace. That was directed at you.
Man, you got me. Busted.
No, I'm just saying.
Look, my views. Look, I like Trump. I campaigned for Trump. I know Trump. I talked to him last night. I'm not against Trump, and you know that.
But you're against his foreign policy.
I think that we should be very careful about entering into more foreign wars that don't help us when our country is dying.
When you say
our
don't
country
help
is
us,
dying.
Look, yes, focus on our country. I'm all for it. But the naivete.
You don't even know how much money this costs. You don't know anything about the country whose government you want to overthrow, and you're calling me reckless.
I want to stop a lunatic who wants to murder us from getting nuclear weapons that could kill millions of Americans.
Fair.
You say, I can't see how that benefits America in any way. That is bizarre. And by the way, isolationism, your foreign policy is the foreign policy of Jimmy Carter and Barack Obama.
Oh, absolutely.
And it doesn't work.
Yeah, I'm a big leftist. This is so silly. Now I'm Jimmy Carter and Barack Obama. Okay. Let me just say one last thing.
So how is your foreign policy different from Jimmy Carter's? Seriously.
Please.
I asked that question seriously.
I don't even know what you're talking about. Jimmy Carter?
So
what century is this? I am the product of the last 25 years, watching carefully, being involved in the periphery, and I see an unending string of foreign policy disasters that have impoverished and hurt our country.
Unending string.
Unending string. They would include Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, Syria, and our inability to stop the Houthis, by the way, in Yemen, which exposes us as weak, and I grieve over that. So these are failures. You helped preside over some of them as a member of the Senate.
What failures, foreign policy failures, have I presided over?
Well, we were unable to beat Russia in the war that you supported against Russia. You've been spending the last 3 years telling us that Vladimir Putin is evil and we're going to beat him with other people's children, and 1 million of those kids are now dead. You've never apologized for that. That was a full failure.
By the way, look, the level of number of falsehoods you lay out just in one statement are rather
You haven't supported the war against Russia?
Are rather stunning. So the war against Russia was caused, which I have explained in great detail, by Joe Biden's weakness.
But you supported the war.
If you want to talk, we can talk Russia and Ukraine. I'm happy to talk about it.
Do you think that's been a success?
No, it's been an absolute disaster.
Okay, but you supported it. Shouldn't you apologize?
No, you should apologize. I'm not going to engage in the demanding of apologize. So I'm
like, that's my point. Is all these failures and no one ever says I'm sorry?
Matter, or do you just throw out if you want to talk, we can talk.
Okay, I do. I want to know why that seems like a true disaster for the United States. You have supported it.
Do you believe Joe Biden's weakness caused the war in Ukraine?
I think Joe Biden's aggression caused it.
His aggression? What aggression?
He demanded that Ukraine join NATO. How does that help the United States?
It is a terrible idea, and I have vigorously opposed Ukraine joining NATO.
Okay, so that's what caused the war.
No, it's not.
Okay. All right.
Do you want to know what caused the war? Look, you do the dismissive. You're not actually interested in facts. You're like, okay.
Okay, tell me. It seems super obvious. You're absolutely right. And I'm sorry. That is a tick of mine that is wrong. And I mean this with sincerity. I'm sorry to do that to you. I just think it seems so obvious that sending Kamala Harris to the NATO Security Conference to say you're going to join NATO is what triggered the invasion days later.
Okay, so can I, this will take a few minutes to lay out because it's complicated, but I think the facts matter. I think two things caused the war in Ukraine. Number one, I think Biden's incredible weakness and the disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan. Now, I believe we need to leave Afghanistan, but not with the incompetence that led to 13 servicemen and women being murdered by terrorists there. The way Biden did that was disastrous, and I think our enemies looked to the commander-in-chief and said, this president is weak. And when that withdrawal was so disastrous, I said publicly at the time, the chances of Putin invading Ukraine have just risen tenfold.
Right.
But secondly, and this is critically important.
Well, I agree. That was awful, the withdrawal.
And it was a major cause of our enemies all said, hey, this president is weak. And so it invited. And by the way, look, I despise war. And I think weakness and isolationism produces war because it invites aggression from our bad guys. It's why I agree with Ronald Reagan's peace through strength. The best way you avoid war is being strong.